like they need a Shanahan or a Mike McDaniels. That's the secret sauce. Left with a defensive coach, Tua was overwhelmed. If you gave Brock Purdy a defensive coach, Matt Eberflus, I think he would be overwhelmed. But Tua and McDaniel have the right coach, the right system. And, you know, one guy had Waddle and Tyreek Hill. One has Kittle, had Debo, Christian McCaffrey. So it works to some level. Don't love either, but I like both. But when you start circumstantially paying too much for Tua, now he's got a weak O-line, and he's just not good enough and gets exposed. That's what I think will eventually, over time, happen to Brock Purdy. So I was talking to somebody yesterday about this. So the Niners signed Fred Warner yesterday to a huge contract. So the Niners are now paying three positions you'd prefer to get value out of, positions the rival Rams don't pay anything to. They're now paying Christian McCaffrey, a running back, second most for a running back in the league, George Kittle, first most for a tight end, and Fred Warner, first most for a linebacker. And they're doing this because they have to, because they've missed on so many picks. John Lynch, in my opinion, has not been a great drafter, and I think Shanahan has the power in the building. San Francisco also gave up 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance. So now what you have to do is you get forced to sign positional players where you'd really like value. I mean, right now, the Rams don't pay anything for linebackers. The Rams don't pay anything for corner. They don't pay anything for safety. They don't even pay a ton for a left tackle. And so I've said with Tua and Purdy, it's situational. I'd like him at $38 million. I'd like him at $42. I don't like him in the 50s. And here's an example of what I'm talking about. If you go look at the Niners, I took their last 5 drafts. In their last 18 picks in 23 and 22 drafts, the Niners have 1 hit, Brock Purdy, 1. I'll give you Jake Moody, but I don't think anybody loves a kicker in the 3rd round, and he's been disappointing. And I'll count Ricky Pearsall as a semi-hit, but I thought he was overdrafted. They have back-to-back drafts in 22 and 23. They didn't get anybody. The Dallas Cowboys, like the Niners, overpaid for a quarterback. Therefore, the offensive line is weaker than you'd like, and the team is top-heavy. One injury, and all the dominoes come tumbling down. Look at the Cowboys. The Cowboys' last 2 drafts. I like DeMarvion Overshown, but he's never healthy. Tyler Guyton, I'm not sure he's a hit. I'll give it to you. But I would argue in their last 2 drafts, they don't have one absolute hit. Conversely, the Lions had a 3-draft stretch, 21, 22, 23, where they had 12 hits in 3 drafts. So the Jared Goff contract, and Jared's better, in my opinion, as a natural talent than Purdy or Tua, it's not as punitive because they can let go of veterans. They hit on draft picks. Similarly, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Jalen Hurts contract, they can pay Saquon Barkley because they never miss on their 1st or 2nd round picks. I mean, they've gone 4 years where they've hit on all of them. And they got Jalen Hurts for free for years because he was a 2nd round pick. So last season was an example of what I think the Niners are going to face over the next 2 to 3 years. Last year, Christian McCaffrey got hurt. Trent Williams got hurt. Oh, Brandon Ayuk got hurt. Bosa got dinged. And they have no depth.
Okay, guys. This might be one of the best takes for me to get after. That's why I was smiling, because I am so happy right now. I am so happy, and we are going to start from the beginning. Oh, do I love doing this? I love doing this so much. All right, first off, kind of like, okay, first off, one of the biggest attacks of paying Brock Purdy is, well, there's no money to pay other players, okay? There's no money to pay other players. But then you see that they were able to sign McCaffrey, Ayuk, Kittle, Williams, Bosa, Warner. All these guys are getting paid. And now we see the bottom. San Francisco overpaying for its stars. I thought the whole point of paying Brock Purdy was bad. Okay, I thought, if you pay Brock Purdy, then you can't pay for other players, and you need the money to pay for other players. And if you want to say, well, you want to get a better value out of some of these other players, out of these other positions, fine. If that's what you believe in, but let's not act like that's some written rule here. Like, it's just I don't think there's just this one size fits all way of who you pay and who you don't. Like, that's just not how the NFL works, okay? Everyone always keeps trying to create these rules as to how you win in the NFL, and it's always like, it's essentially everything, okay? Well, you need to have a good quarterback, you need to have a good coaching staff, you need to have a run game, you need to have an O-line, you need to have a pass rush, well, you can't forget about a safety and a corner, and it's like, oh, so you need, like, defensive players, offensive players, coaches, quarterback. Oh, and you can't win without a kicker. I mean, a lot of games come down to, kicking the ball. If you don't have someone who can make a 50-yarder, you're in trouble, right? So it's just like, what are we doing here? And then we're saying, oh, well, someone like Brock Purdy, he can't really have a defensive head coach, and, he needs a Shanahan. Pretty much every quarterback needs that, okay? Every quarterback needs that, especially if you're trying to win. If you're trying to just have, like, a pretty cool career where you put up some nice stats and you can say, hey, I didn't have a great coach, I didn't have a great team, but I still played pretty well, then great. But you know what? I don't care about that category. I care about the category of people who win Super Bowls. So I'm always looking at it through the lens of, like, what does it take to win a Super Bowl? And you need a great coach. Has Josh Allen won Super Bowls? He has a defensive head coach. His stats are through the roof. He's amazing. I think Josh Allen is better than Brock Purdy, okay? But yet Brock Purdy has made it to a Super Bowl. It's straight up. The 49ers have been better run than the Buffalo Bills. Shanahan was, without a shadow of a doubt, the best offensive, a better offensive coach that Josh Allen, or Lamar Jackson for that matter, or Joe Burrow has ever had on their side for their team, without a shadow of a doubt. Okay? So I don't get kind of saying, like, well, this player needs this coach or whatever. And it's like, I mean, Jalen Hurts is, not so great, that offense in 23, amazing in 22, not so great in 23, great in 24. Coaching matters for everyone. Everyone. One quarterback absolutely hit the lottery, and we all know who that guy is. So that just, like, that take also drives me insane. And then we go on and say, okay, well, they haven't drafted well. That, in their last, I forget exactly what number he gave, the last 12 draft picks or whatever it was, he goes, like, the only hit was Brock Purdy. Maybe that's why you pay Brock Purdy? Because drafting can be hard? Maybe? Right? You think maybe, like, that's what you do? Like, drafting is hard? If you want to criticize their draft, like, that's fine. I'm open to that. I'm open to that. But it's just like, this idea that you can just move on from Brock and you can draft another quarterback because it's just oh so easy is insane. It really, really is insane. And again, this idea, oh, I'd like him at $38 million. So would I. I'd like every single quarterback in the 30s. Every single quarterback in the 30s and in the 40s for that matter. But that's not an issue of the 49ers. That's more of a culture of the business of the NFL. And it's actually really hilarious because, and I ripped Dak Prescott for this because this was one of the worst comments I ever heard. He was like, it's my job, my responsibility to keep elevating, essentially how much money quarterbacks get paid. I'm next man up. It's my responsibility. And so he wanted to make sure that he got even more money than has ever been seen before because it was his job. And it's like, that's not your job. Your job is to win. Your job is to win Super Bowls. Your job is to represent the Dallas Cowboys, not the greater good for the quarterback position. So I guess Josh Allen failed at his job and Patrick Mahomes failed at his job. Two of those guys are going to the Hall of Fame. Don't know about you, Dak, but so just kind of absurd. And so Brock Purdy didn't continue that nonsense. He got a $53 million contract, which to me, it feels like we're going to start to see that being, at least right now, that being kind of the contracts. It's hard for me to see the Jalen Hurtses, like the Lamar Jacksons. We just saw Josh Allen take 55 when they're up for new contracts. Like I could see the guarantees changing. I don't know. Like I'm trying to figure this out honestly, because it's weird. Lamar Jackson takes like $63 million a year or something. I'd be like, that feels weird at this point, because everybody seems to understand you can't just take all the money in the world. You're not. It's just going to be hard to win. You know, when Jalen Hurts is up for a contract, like I don't see it. And so I just think that a $53 million contract will just continue to be within range. Now, again, in a vacuum, I agree that Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, like those quarterbacks should definitely have a step forward in how much money they're making relative to the Tuas, to the, you know, all the other usual suspects that we know. You know, Brock Purdy even to a degree including. And so I understand that. But again, that's not how this NFL is working right now, okay? It's just not. The Rams had Stafford's. They had all the power. They had absolutely all the power. So they were able to get, you know, a more friendlier deal there. You know, Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, like all these quarterbacks that got like cheaper deals, they were all for just specific purposes, specific reasons. The Raiders were trying to give Matthew Stafford even more money than they gave Geno Smith. You know, the Raiders are trying to actually like give some stability to their franchise. Seattle Seahawks were kind of like, well, we need a quarterback, and they gave, you know, Sam Darnold a very cheap deal, who in his entire career realistically only had one great year, so he's not going to be able to get a $50-some million contract, especially considering his final 2 games. Baker Mayfield was hanging on by a thread. Baker Mayfield was given a prove-it opportunity, and he played pretty well with the Bucs. He didn't light the league on fire. You know, he didn't have a Sam Darnold year where people were like, oh my God, what is good? This guy's unbelievable. And so then he got like a $33 million a year contract, which makes total sense. You know, he was wanted essentially nowhere around the league. The Bucs gave him a lifeline. He played pretty good, and they're like, okay, we want you here. And he was like grateful for it. It was like a mutually beneficial relationship. But considering how the last 2 years went, I don't imagine if he was up for another contract that he would be signing a contract in the 30s. In fact, I'm so 1000% confident. So these contracts that are in the 30s and 40s or so, they exist for such narrow reasons. No one's really signing a true franchise quarterback where we're like, we are trying to win Super Bowls, and we're now going to pay you $38 million a year. It's not how it works. Those teams that are signing those, the Atlanta Falcons, were like, we're going to sign Kirk Cousins. We can get him for a decent deal. We recognize that he's old, that he's coming off an Achilles injury, you know, a tear, surgery. We're not necessarily expecting that Kirk Cousins is just going to step in for our team and then just lead us to a Super Bowl. Why? How do I know that? Because they literally a couple months later drafted Michael Penix Jr. So that's why when you sign those contracts, when you sign the contracts in the 50s, it's because you're like, I believe you're going to ultimately lead us to a Super Bowl. Whether it happens or not, you know, that's up to a many list of factors. Not just the quarterback and how much you pay him. Again, I'm always for paying the quarterback less money. I am. It gives you more freedom, which is why I think Jalen Hurts will take less money. It's why we've already seen Mahomes, and I think he'll continue to take less money. It's why I'm intrigued to see what Lamar Jackson does, you know? But I don't know why we keep going in circles in this. It's just hilarious because we can't even like we can't even remember our own previous things. You can't pay Brock Purdy because then you can't pay other players. Here's a list of all the other players you're playing. Well, you know, it's not that hard. You know, if Brock Purdy wants too much money, you just move on from him and you draft another quarterback. Yeah, but we actually haven't been very good at drafting players recently. Okay, well, so then, well, listen, you need to have great coaches, I mean, look what Tua, as soon as he got a new coach, and that coach has not led them to a Super Bowl or even close to a Super Bowl. I don't even think a playoff win. Yeah, well, defensive coaches and Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, who are all the other defensive coaches, CJ Stroud, none of those guys have gotten to Super Bowls. So you can't pay all these players. Well, luckily for the Eagles, they draft well and they pay for players because they paid for Saquon Barkley. They paid for AJ Brown. They pay for Lane Johnson, Cam Jurgens. They pay for, again, just insert a list. They pay for their linebackers, like they pay for their players as well, and they paid Jalen Hurts. Like you can find ways to do it all. Like you can do it. You can do it. Just like Adam Sandler taught us in Waterboy. You can do it. So it's just, I don't know, man. Continues to be a weird conversation. You would think that Brock Purdy signed a $75 million contract, and you would say that they, it's so hilarious. See the list of these players that Colin's kind of like, are they overpaying for these stars? If they moved on from these players, they would say it's because of Brock Purdy's contract. They would say, they're making room for Brock Purdy's contract, or this is what happens when you pay Brock Purdy $53 million. You have to move on from Christian McCaffrey. You can't afford Brandon Ayuk. Kittle, the leader in the locker room, you gotta let him go. So it's just like I don't understand then. Like what are we what are we doing then? It just doesn't make sense. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the 49ers? Are they overpaying for their stars? Are they drafting terrible? Is Brock Purdy not worth the money? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.